Arcturus is in the northern, can also be seen in the northern and southern hemisphere, sorry. So the Arcturus star system is home to one of the most advanced alien civilizations in our galaxy. So this is a 5th dimensional through 11th dimensional vibrational civilization. It's a prototype for future civilizations. So this vibratory energy from Arcturus, and you see some beautiful depictions of Arcturian beings here, acts as an emotional, mental, and spiritual healer for humanity on Earth, but also as a gateway of the souls of men after death and before their next incarnation. So this energy kind of acts as a transition station and adaptation of non-physical consciousness to the specifics of the physical world. So basically what happens is that souls go, after they pass on, they go through the Arcturus Stargate, and they go through this, I would say, processing of, maybe they review their past lives through the Akashic Records, and they usually have Arcturian guides and Akashic guides that are assisting them in this process. And then they also, from there, will pick goals that they want to accomplish in their next incarnation, and then they get a choice of certain lifetimes or incarnations that they can be partake of. So the Arcturus stands out for their total focus in the areas of psychospiritual healing and unity consciousness. So it's just, so they're just beyond, I would say, as far as, going through the Stargate, they just really assist with that process. So moving on here. So Arcturus, like I mentioned before, is one of 2 major stargates. Because the Arcturian guides, when they process souls, access the Akashic Records quite a bit, they are considered to be the keepers of the Akashic Records. I know some of the previous speakers have mentioned the keepers of the Akashic Records. I do believe, at least that's my interpretation, is that a lot of these keepers are Arcturian beings. But a lot of times when you're going into the records, you're not going to see like alien beings, helping you with the Akashic Records. A lot of times it's more like you'll feel a connection, or there'll be a vibration that you'll be connected with, but they don't necessarily show you their form, because a lot of them are so high dimensional. They're beyond physical form. So a lot of times when I'm connecting with even my Arcturian guides, I don't necessarily see them. I feel their presence, I feel the connection. So moving along to the next star system, or I know we're still on Arcturus here, sorry. So how does Arcturian culture impact our experience here on Earth today? So my understanding with my connection and my work with the Akashic Records, I've been doing this work since 2014. I had my great awakening in 2012. And that's a whole other story. So because we have a lot of slides to go through, I won't go through that. But my understanding, when I was looking at the history of Arcturus, in early Arcturian history, they were actually attacked by draconian forces that wanted to take control of the Stargate. So not only was Lyra attacked, Arcturus was also attacked. Unlike Lyra, however, the Arcturians were prepared. Okay, they already knew. They knew something was going to happen. So maybe it's because of their access to the Akashic Records. I don't know, but so during this period, the Arcturians had to really go through this massive evolution to not only improve their technology, but also go through this expansion, evolution, and consciousness. So because of this, Arcturians and even Arcturian starseeds, of which I'm one of them, and I think Neil is too, actually, but we tend to be spiritual heavyweights in order to be of service to others. So some of the lessons that you might deal with or see when you're working with Arcturian starseeds or people that have had incarnations in Arcturus include maybe dealing with negative thinking. I know that sounds counterintuitive to an Arcturian being, but it was one of the things they had to deal with during the draconian attacks. Maybe some materialism when they're here on Earth, dealing with ego. Like, again, that sounds very counterintuitive, but I do see that as a pattern with Arcturian starseeds that are not well integrated, as well as, the beautiful and positive qualities of wisdom, sensitivity, teaching. Arcturian starseeds and Arcturians are amazing teachers, and also spiritual guardians. After all, they are the guardians. Okay, so that's Arcturus. We're going to touch on Sirius. Personally, I love Sirius. I don't know. I love Arcturus because that's my home system, but Sirius is fascinating to me because there was so much diversity, and because of its great influence on planet Earth. I would say the majority of our, I guess if you want to call it, our civilizations here on Earth were heavily influenced by Sirius, particularly Egypt, but also Native American culture and the Mayan culture, and we can go on and on. But the Sirius is a star. It's in the constellation of Canis Major, and it's actually one of Earth's nearest neighbors. I think only Alpha Centauri is closest, or there might be a couple of other star systems that's closer than Sirius. But Sirius is only 8 light years away. Because of that reason, Sirian beings had a great interest in Earth. They've been colonizing and visiting Earth for millennia. But after the fall of Lyra, many of the Vegan and Lyran starships settled in Sirius. And specifically, they started colonizing the system of Sirius A. And during this time, they were learning lessons from their experience in Lyra. They didn't want to go through that again. So they were going through this great drive for technological advancement. So the big focus in Sirius during the early history was technological advancement during the early days of their colonization. Now, Procyon is a binary star system. Sirius is a trinary. There was Sirius A, B, and C. I'm not sure if C actually exists anymore. It did at one time. But Procyon is a binary system. A lot of people don't know about Procyon, but it's actually a very close neighbor to Sirius because it's in the Canis Minoris constellation, which is the little dog constellation. And it's actually fairly close to Earth. It's only 11.4 light years. Now, the Procyonians are highly technically advanced Nordic-looking people who were interdimensional space travelers, and they often work very closely with Sirian beings. So a lot of times, if you're seeing, or in the records, Sirian beings doing things, sometimes you'll see them, tag teaming with Procyonians. So this is where I think some of the concept of Nordic-looking beings came from. They were descendants of also Lyran refugees. So what was their impact on the Akashic Records? So one of the things I see a lot of when I'm doing Galactic Akashic readings is the Sirian mystery schools. I see that over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, I think I even attended the Sirian mystery schools during one of my incarnations. So the Sirians created the Sirian mystery schools after generations of collecting information from their exploration missions. The Sirian mystery schools have played a major part in the Galactic Akashic Records and also in the collective consciousness of Earth humans. So I do a lot of readings for folks that say, yeah, when I bring up the Sirian mystery schools, they immediately feel a connection with it. They immediately, it's like their memories are starting to flow in, of things that they learned in these schools. And the other influence that Sirius has had on the Akashic Records and also our collective consciousness is our current knowledge in science, spirituality, and medicine. The Sirian people were considered to be the masters of physical healing. These were very practical people. They have a very strong connection to the Vegan lineage. Many of them were descendants of Vegan refugees that left the Vega system. And these people were beautiful beings or beautiful humanoid beings that, were very much, I would say, very, very much in connected with healing and with you working with plants and medicinals. Ayurvedic medicine originated from Vega. So how did the Syrian cultures become, had its influence on Earth here today? So like I mentioned before, they were considered to be the masters of physical healing. Now, Syrians have been colonizing Earth for quite a while. As a matter of fact, they contributed a lot of their own DNA to the genetic material of the Homo sapiens forebears. So many Earth people are genetically identical to Syrians. So pretty much all of us contain, I'll say, some percentage of Syrian DNA. And also the Procyon races also contributed their DNA to Earth genetics, particularly to maybe Northern European or Scandinavian groups, or so those areas. But you see also, they were contributing their DNA also. The Pleiadians did as well to a certain extent, maybe not to the same level as the Syrians. So some of the lessons that, some of my Syrian starseeds or people connected with Sirius might be going through include self-limitation, old school thinking. Like, they're very traditional people. These are practical people. Maybe avoiding risks, as well as being, so some of the positive qualities we see with them is a lot of them are always of service to others. They always want to be helping others, they tend to be gifted healers because they are the masters of physical healing. And then they're also tend to be responsible and practical. I'm married to a man that has Lyran and Syrian past lives, and I see this quality in him a lot. Thank goodness, because I'm an Arcturian with pie in the sky, and I sometimes don't want to deal with the practical details, and but he does, and we make a good team that way. I do see quite a few Syrian, Arcturian people that couple up as far as starseeds. Like, we tend to tag team with each other during our Earth incarnations for that reason, because we're flip sides. Okay, let's move on to some other star systems. So a lot of people are fascinated with the Pleiades and feel connection with the Pleiades. So you see some representation here of a typical Pleiadian being and some Lyran lion beings perhaps here. And also a map of little basic map of some of the stars within the Pleiades cluster. So it's located in the Taurus constellation. And this is a little bit farther away. They're 500 light years from Earth. Now, the Hyades is also in the Taurus constellation. A lot of people don't know about the Hyades, but it's one of the closest star clusters to Earth. It's only a distance of 150 light years. But it's pretty much the V that makes up the horns of the bull. That's basically what it is. Aldebaran is basically seen within this V, but it's actually much closer to Earth. It's 65 light years. Not that it's that close, but it's closer. And so all three of these systems were inhabited by Lyran refugees. So they colonized these systems, particularly the star systems of Alcyon and Taygeta within the Pleiades, but also eventually they branched out into the other systems. I've seen Pleiadian starseeds connected with the systems of Electra or Merope or Maya. Maya's a big one with healers. So some of the Lyran refugees also ended up in the Hyades and the Aldebaran systems as well. So what's their impact on the Akashic Records? So the Pleiadians, they evolved their civilization, and nowadays we know them as this peaceful race of extraterrestrials who currently hold chairs in the galactic councils. So they perform many different tasks overseeing Pleiadian relationships with the rest of the galaxy, and they're very much connected with the Galactic Federation. So a lot of times if you're connecting with the Galactic Federation, you're going to see Pleiadian representatives also connected with the Galactic Federation. The Pleiadian contribution to unity consciousness and galactic teamwork has had a huge impact on human development, particularly here on Earth. Now, the Pleiadian people were a little bit more introspective, and they weren't as much, I would say, involved with star travel and technologies as their Pleiadian and Aldebaran cousins, but they contributed a lot to our culture through creativity and craftsmanship. So how do they impact us today? So how do they impact our Akashic records? What do we see with Pleiadian, Pleiadian, Aldebaran civilizations? So pretty much a lot of our Earth languages was heavily influenced by the Lyran Pleiadian language known as Tamil. So our language actually here on Earth, it all has basic roots within the Tamil, which is also spoken in Lyra. So the Pleiadians developed it from Lyra, and we have an adaptation of it here on Earth. The Pleiadians have also contributed greatly to our spirituality, our development in metaphysics and spirituality. However, the Pleiadians, who started off kind of mostly as craftspeople, eventually became part of the Galactic Federation, and they really were masters at facilitative leadership and the administrative planning of world events and world affairs. So that's their influence. Aldebaran people influenced technology and space exploration, which we're just now getting into here on Earth. So some of the lessons you might see with your Pleiadian clients, or if you are a Pleiadian starseed yourself, or if you're connected to Aldebaran and Hyades, because they're all within the Taurus constellation, might include spiritual bypassing. Now, I'm not saying that Pleiadian starseeds always spiritually bypass, but some of them do tend to be focused a lot on love and light and don't want to see the dark aspects. There's a whole cultural reason for that. Because Pleiadians are very empathic, sometimes they fall into codependency situations and appeasement, but they also have the positive qualities of optimism, empathy, transmutation, and being a true light worker. So they have a lot to contribute to our culture and our Akashic records. Andromeda. So the depiction here is actually of a Cassiopean cat being, and then you see the Andromeda constellation, which I'm actually, so it was supposed to be Andromeda constellation, but it's all this. But the Andromeda galaxy is seen within the Andromeda constellation, so that's why it's depicted here. So Andromeda is the 19th biggest star constellation in the night sky. It's located in the first quadrant of the northern hemisphere. So when the Lyran refugees left Lyra, they pretty much dispersed all throughout the galaxy. I mean, they were just going everywhere. So initially, they were trying to find refuge in the Cassiopean constellation, which was a way station for space travelers, along with Cygnus and Hercules and some other constellations. Now, there was a group of indigenous beings called the Cassiopean cat beings, who were great healers. So, they assisted these Lyran refugees for a time, but then they recommended Andromeda as their new home. Because I think part of what I saw in the records is that the Cassiopean cat people were in the process of ascending. They were ascending beyond physicality. So it wasn't feasible for the Lyrans to make Cassiopeia their home. So they recommended Andromeda, which was actually close by. And keep in mind that Andromeda Galaxy is much further out, that we're talking about Andromeda constellation. So they ended up settling in 2 solar systems within the Andromeda constellation, as well as in Pegasus and other nearby constellations. So in the Andromeda constellation, there's at least 28 different races of beings. Some are humanoid and some are not. Some of them are very etheric looking beings. I've seen amphibian beings. I've seen all kinds of different beings, but for the purpose of maybe this presentation, we're going to focus on the humanoid Andromedan beings who were descendants of the Lyran refugees. Okay, so what's their impact on the Akashic records? So Andromedans, because they were located so far away, so Andromeda constellation is actually 2,000 light years away from Earth. Andromeda galaxy is like 2 million light years away. So it's much further out. But even Andromeda constellation was pretty remote. So because of that, the Andromedan people went through a massive evolution. They had to predominantly rely on themselves because they weren't close to many other star systems, except maybe with the exception of Cassiopeia and Pegasus. So the Andromedans were known as masters of scientific and technological endeavors because they really had to amp up their technology. However, I do work quite a bit, or have worked quite a bit, with Andromedan starseeds who are also very gifted in alternative healing, particularly frequency healing. Andromedans love to work with frequency a lot, whether it be through sound or light language or just energy healing. And they also tend to be very creative in the arts and music, particularly music because of the sound connection, but also within the arts. Now, I get this question a lot, like, is there a lot of Andromedans here on starseeds here on Earth? No, there was not that many. Probably they're one of the rarest starseeds, other than perhaps Arcturian starseeds, which also tend to be fairly rare compared to, say, Sirian's starseeds or Pleiadian starseeds. So because of that, they have their own, I would say, individual struggles while going through their incarnations here on Earth. So we're going to hit the next one. So how does Andromedan, Cassiopeian, Pegasus civilization and culture impact us today? So millions of years ago, the Andromedans visited Earth. So a lot of people don't know this. They didn't realize that, hey, Andromedans were also colonizing Earth. But they were more interested in the fauna and the flora. I don't think they were that interested in the sentient humanoid beings that were living on Earth. But because of their, I would say, technological and scientific advancements, the Syrians asked them for some assistance with their genetic manipulation of the Earth Human Genome Project. But Andromedans, they're kind of pretty much hands off. So some of the areas of Earth that you might see some Andromedan influence might be parts of Southeast Asia, as well as the UK. That was kind of a vantage point for some Andromedan colonies. The Andromedans, because they respected, they're very, I would say, independent race of people. So they respected the universal law of free will and freedom. So they didn't want to interfere that much with Earth human evolution. And so they kind of had a more hands-off, I would say, approach to the Earth project, but not so much I would say in contrast to maybe the Syrian involvement, where the Syrians and the Orion people really, really got involved, and Pleiadians got involved there for a while. Even the Arcturians tend to have, like, I don't know, they tended to have like their own special little projects, that in certain parts of the planet. So they weren't nearly as involved, and neither were the Andromedans. So for that reason, when you're working with people that have a connection to either Andromeda Galaxy or Andromeda constellation, or the Pegasus, Pegasus also had colonization from some of these Lyran refugees, and Cassiopeia. So you might see themes that involved escapism. They don't want to deal with the low vibrations here on Earth. Maybe nonconformity. Like I said, very independent people. Sometimes they don't want to compromise. They're not aloof. As a matter of fact, I would say a lot of Andromedan starseeds I worked with have been pretty much, for the most part, they're very humble people. They kind of tend to want to be more in the background than be the forefront of getting a lot of attention. But a lot of people see them as aloof because they don't want to follow the crowd. They're not people that want to be part of the crowd. But some of the positive qualities that they have are they're visionary. I mean, these are people that are technological geniuses. A lot of them end up becoming doctors or scientists. But like I said, not all of them. I do get quite a few that are energy healers and also work with sound frequency healing. They're also, I would say, masters at technological advancements. I would say, other than Arcturus, they're one of the most technologically advanced races in our galaxy. They tend to be innovators and also frequency navigators. We are closing in on the end of this presentation. I want to open it up to some discussion and maybe some questions. I'm just going to go through the next couple of slides here. I appreciate your attention. I hope the artwork and the images were give you an idea of what these beings probably look like. So just some of my closing thoughts here. So a lot of people ask me, how come until just recently we didn't have connection with the Galactic Records? How come, for the last couple of decades or last, 30 years, people were focused on Earth records? The reason why they weren't widely available until now is because the mass consciousness had to have enough spiritual development. Otherwise, people be accessing them, they wouldn't know what they're looking at. So they had to be able to handle that level of the Akashic Records. We weren't quite there yet until just, I would say, within the last 15 years. So during the last few years, we've seen an explosion in meditation, heart-mind connection work, personal healing, of which the previous speakers have done a beautiful job speaking about, and light clearing work, which has helped us tremendously to connect and use the Galactic Akashic Records for personal growth and global healing. So there's been a massive evolution just within the last few years with our ability as a mass consciousness to be able to connect with the Galactic Akashic Records. So also our current interest in UFOs, extraterrestrials, and our cosmic galactic history has given us the key to access the galactic aspects of the Akashic Records. So just us being more open-minded about, some of these, I would say visitations or abductions and things that are happening in ufology and in, the extraterrestrial realm, is also enabling us to reconnect with our long soul memories. A lot of us, when we incarnate on planet Earth, we go through a veil of forgetfulness, and it takes us half a lifetime for some of us, myself, I would say, to reconnect with our soul memories and connect with the Galactic Akashic Records. And it's also, I would say, to understand them and to honor them enough to use the ancient knowledge within, within the records to connect planet Earth as its true destiny as a member of the greater galactic family, which we're going to be seeing with the ascension to the 5D realities that we're moving towards here on Earth. So this concludes my presentation. I do want to invite you to visit my website, debbiesolaris.com.